Welcome to everyone. New York Heritage Bits and Bytes presents Cynthia Van Ness, who is the head of the research library at the Buffalo History Museum. Cynthia is going to explain to us today why the Buffalo History Museum has a KKK membership list and what went into the process of digitizing and making this list available. Hopefully you've all had a chance to take a look at it on the New York Heritage website. And we're going to talk about the Buffalo's Klan experience, or Cynthia is going to, and what was learned from this membership list and why it's a good fit for the New York Heritage digital collections. Cynthia has an MLS from the University of Buffalo and a BA in art history from SUNY Empire State College. Her first job after library school was at the Buffalo and Erie County Public Library, where she worked for 13 years. Half of those years she spent in the Grosvenor Room, which is the local history and genealogy collection. And she there developed research and reference expertise in the people, places, things, and history of Buffalo. And I can tell you she has a very, very, very extensive knowledge of the history of not only Buffalo, but the Western New York region. She was appointed Director of Library and Archives at the Buffalo History Museum in October of 2007. And in her own time, she is the author of Victorian Buffalo, Quotable Buffalo, and the creator of BuffaloResearch.com, which is an online guide to researching ancestors and architecture in Buffalo, New York, and is an invaluable research resource for anybody who's doing Western New York history. The New York Heritage digital collections, in which this KKK directory and other collections from the Buffalo History Museum reside, was created and maintained by the Empire State Library Network, which promotes access to the wealth of historical resources held by our cultural heritage institutions in New York. So inquiring minds can learn more about the people, places, and events that contributed to the making of New York State. You can visit the website at nyheritage.org, where in addition to digitized collections, we also have several online exhibits. And many of the regions throughout New York State have complimentary physical banners as exhibit panels that go along with those online exhibits. This session is being recorded, and previous webinars and recordings from New York Heritage Bits and Bytes are available on our YouTube channel. So I want to get into the reason why we're all here today. And that's to find out more about what Cynthia does in those mysterious stacks and how the KKK directory ended up there. So okay. Cynthia, how did you get that directory? Tell us that story.
So this membership list, I just want to first, before I start, thank Heidi and thank Ryan for inviting me to do this presentation. And I'm stunned that there are 50 of you here. I thought it'd be like 3 diehards. So thank you all for joining in. So the membership list came to us before I started at the museum. It was donated in 1988 by a Father Nelson from Canisius College. And as I get into my presentation, you might get a sense of why Canisius was interested in this Klan material. But back in 1988, donated this membership list and a number of other sort of Klan pieces along with it. So we had it in the collection since then. I wish I could say that we scarfed it off the street back in 1924, but we didn't. It came to us from Canisius College.
You know, I think too, remembering that Father Nelson was the archivist at Canisius.
Oh, okay.
He was the archivist, and Father Dembski, who was the president at the time, was very interested in promoting Western New York history. Mm-hmm. And that's where the New York Heritage magazine got its start, I believe, was at Canisius College with that Western New York history project. So maybe it was as a result of that interest that they ended up with that. Mm-hmm. And then Father Nelson gave it to you, which is a wonderful thing. And so what are some of the stories associated with this? I know you've got some slides to share with us, and maybe that would be the easiest way to dive into that.
Okay, I'm going to start my slides. So bear with me here while I'm sharing my screen.
Stories are always good with pictures.
There's always a lag time for screen sharing. So, there.
You're on.
You're on. Okay, so here's my opening slide about our Klan membership list. So I have to give credit where credit is due. Everything I know about the Klan I learned from this book by Sean Lay. I talk this book up pretty much all the time. He wrote it, this is 1995, is that like 25 years ago? Is that how long ago? So he
No.
wrote it in 1995, and he studied the our Klan membership list in order to understand the demographics of the Buffalo Klan. So everything that I know about the Klan starts with Sean Lay, and it wouldn't be fair not to give credit to him first. So just a big shout out. This is one of the best books you will ever read about Buffalo. I'm not making that up. It's on my top 10. It is one of our finest moments as a city, the way that we rose up and fought the Klan in the 1920s. It's just staggering what happened and how Buffalo responded. So get it from a library or bookseller near you. So if you haven't seen the Klan list, the opening page, here is a scan of it. You can kind of see why it was a good idea to digitize this. It was printed on newsprint. Edges are kind of chipped. It's had wear and tear. Interestingly, it does not mention the Klan at all on the cover page. So it would take sort of a knowledgeable person after the fact to figure out, what is this document? So over on the right, we have our citation for it. The collection's called the Buffalo Ku Klux Klan Papers. Again, came from Father Nelson at Canisius College. And we have not digitized the rest of the collection. There is a deposition, some newspaper clippings, a few pieces of Klan ephemera, and that material is still offline. So this is like the big amazing thing about the Klan, is that when they came to town early 1920s, they rented an office, and that office was in the Calumet building, which is famous for sort of being part of the 1990s downtown Buffalo resurgence on Chippewa Street. This building is still there. The Klan rented the office sort of under a front, the KB Ad Sign Company. So that was how they kind of got away with renting an office. So the two important figures in the story for me are Mayor Francis Schwab and Edward Orbertine. Now, Schwab was elected as Buffalo's first Roman Catholic mayor. So when the Klan came to town, they really focused on immigrants, and they focused on Catholics, and they focused on Prohibition. Now, Schwab owned a share, or was part owner, in a brewery at the time. This is the height of Prohibition. Some of you may have heard that the booze was kind of flowing freely in Buffalo. So that was the toehold that the Klan exploited, the fact that Prohibition wasn't really being enforced here. So Schwab recognizes the Klan basically as a mortal enemy because he's Catholic and they are anti-Catholic, and he comes from an immigrant family and they are anti-immigrant, and he owns a share in a brewery and they were supporters of Prohibition while he was opposed to it. So he recognized them as a threat right away. And what he did was he recruited a former police officer, Edward Orbertine, to go undercover and infiltrate the Klan. So there's a picture of Edward Orbertine. I believe he was a member of the Vice Squad and had been dismissed from the force. Maybe there was a little corruption there, I'm not real sure. But he had been on the police force, so he was probably a good candidate to sort of recruit for this undercover role. So what happens, there's a lot that happens in the book, so I'm kind of giving you the highlights here. The Klan office was raided, probably at the instigation of Mayor Schwab, possibly by Orbertine or others. The membership list was stolen. And then through a number of sort of machinations, is that how you pronounce that word? It ends up on display in the lobby of Buffalo Police Headquarters. So this exposed all of these Buffalonians to public view. So first, there's a trickle of people coming to see the Klan list, and then there's a few more people, and then thousands are coming to see the list. And at that stage, somebody copied all those names and printed up this expose of traitors pamphlet, which we have today, and was selling it on the street. So the Klan was horrified that they had been compromised publicly. They figured out that it was probably Edward Orbertine who had infiltrated the Klan. They sent for one of their Klan officers from Atlanta who comes up to Buffalo to start investigating. They start following and stalking Orbertine, confronted him on Durham Street, which is in the Ferry Grider neighborhood, and he died in a shootout with Klan members in front of this house. Austin, I think it's Thomas Austin, who was the Klan member investigating him, also died in that shootout. He was 26 years old, and he has never been properly recognized in Buffalo as someone who gave his life fighting the Klan, which is a remarkable, remarkable thing. So, a lot of time passes. The Klan list comes to us from Canisius. If you haven't figured out by now, Canisius probably was monitoring or interested in the Klan because of their anti-Catholic stance. So I think, I don't know if Canisius acquired that membership list back in the 20s or sometime after, but you can kind of understand why this material would matter to them, because they were being targeted by the Buffalo Klan as Catholics. So now 2011 rolls around. I'm on duty here at the History Museum, and our good friend Timothy Binga is teaching the LIS 563 Digital Libraries course at the UB Library School. And he had this great project system, way to get projects into the system. He would solicit project proposals from area cultural organizations like libraries, museums, archives. And you'd submit your proposal, and I think the class would select from these proposals what they wanted to work on. So I submitted the Klan list, and it was accepted, and his students did the rest. They did the scans, they did the OCR, they wrote the metadata, they did all the work to make it ready to upload to New York Heritage. So as a result of the years I've been working here and putting stuff online, either at New York Heritage or through lots of the Google Docs projects that we do or other places, I've kind of come up with a very informal criteria. So this is not written down. It's not museum policy. It's just some of the things I think through when I'm choosing to put something online. For our purposes, because our staff is so small and we don't have a giant amount of storage space on a server, and I imagine neither does New York Heritage, that I like to go with high interest, low volume collections. And the Klan was perfect for that. High interest because everybody recognizes the name of the Klan. Everybody understands why the Klan matters. And this was a low volume collection. It had 30 some pages as opposed to 300. So that made it a little more feasible to get it scanned. I like to do projects that can be scanned in-house, because when you have to send something out for an oversized scanning job or a special handling, that costs money. And we don't have a giant budget for this. And if possible, if the project can be accomplished by one librarian handling scanning and metadata, even better, again, because our staff is not huge. So that this membership list really fired on all of those cylinders for us. So I have a piece of advice here. This is really important. If you're going to digitize a document that identifies anybody, bad actors, by name, check first to see if there are any decision makers in your organization are, any ancestral names are there, like their parents, grandparents, trustees, board members, directors, whatever. That's one of the things I did before submitting this proposal to New York Heritage, is I checked for a few board member names. Not so that you shouldn't digitize something like this, just so that you are prepared in case somebody has an attack of embarrassment, or they feel like they're being shamed by this organization that they serve. So just a hint for when you're dealing with problematic, troubling material like that, difficult material. And I just want to throw up our link on the screen to where the rest of our digital collections are. And of course, you can take down our email address and shoot me questions at any time. And I'll leave that up for a minute and let people either grab the link. I can also put the link in the chat, or grab our email address, and then I'll turn the mic back over to Heidi. So I'm going to do a stop share right about now and go back to the screen.
That was quite the story. Really interesting. And it does touch on so many different points that I think a lot of people who are on this can relate to the question of resources and capacity to digitize collections. And this isn't the only one. You've got, how many collections do you have up on New York Heritage now? I think you've got, I would say about a dozen at least.
Yeah, I've lost count.
And then you've got your own on your own website. So there's additional ones. How do you decide who's next in line for digitization? I mean, do you stick with that criteria? But how,
yeah,
you've
I
got so
definitely
many things that would meet that.
Oh, we have thousands and thousands of things that, that people would love to see online. So yeah, so it starts with capacity. Can we scan it in-house? Do I have enough talent or, labor in-house to do it? Is it something that people have been asking for? I'm very sensitive to what people are asking for. So I kind of like, there's an uptick in questions about Prohibition. I noticed this over the past few years, more and more questions about Prohibition. So one of the things that we did with Amy Miller, who's our assistant librarian, she did this huge map of Prohibition incidents in Buffalo, just a 4-year period, like 1920 to 23, like raids and arrests and other, incidents that were reported in the news, and mapped them. So part of what we do is, do we have the tools in-house that aren't going to cost us anything? Do we have the talent and labor in-house? And is this something that people are actually asking about? Am I picking up public interest on it? So that's kind of where we go.
Mm-hmm. So of course, too, like anniversaries, I think the Prohibition Amendment anniversary, women's suffrage anniversaries are all happening about now. So you are seeing an uptick of those kinds of exhibits or displays or featured collections online. So yeah, that makes total sense. The other thing that I was going to ask you is, so you mentioned that you have other materials in this collection. So it wasn't just the directory that was donated. It was a collection of materials. And I know for some of your other collections, you have representations or selections, like the Crystal Beach postcards.
Right.
Crystal Beach, what was an amusement park, summer beach facility for people who aren't familiar, who aren't from the area. It was actually in Canada, and people from the States would take boats or drive over and, have a day out or spend a week at a cottage in Crystal Beach. But you have those Crystal Beach postcard collections. And I know those for nostalgic reasons, for family history reasons, a lot of people probably look for those, but you have a representation of those. So is that how because I know a lot of people are afraid to digitize collections because they're afraid people are always going to look at the materials online and not come into the repository. Is that your sense, or do you feel like this actually draws more people?
I feel like there's studies showing that the more you share, the more visitorship you're likely to get. I don't know if I'm not real worried about whether it cuts into visitorship or not. One thing that I'm glad of is that it cuts down on wear and tear and handling of originals. So that's always a good thing. So cutting down on the getting stuff out, handling it, putting it away, and all the things that can go wrong, and just those two little steps. So it cuts down on that. I think another criteria that I think about is relative uniqueness of a collection. Like if we alone own something, that's a factor, or if it's something that exists in multiples. Like as it happens, we're not the only library that has a copy of that newsprint clan list. I think there's one in Texas as well. So I also think about relative uniqueness of a collection. One of the postcard projects we did for New York Heritage some years ago is we looked at our postcard collection. We have a gigantic postcard collection for Buffalo. We have 8,000 or 9,000 cards, a lot of duplicates. And just about almost every day, I'm not making this up, almost every day, another postcard arrives in the mail from some nice person somewhere in the country who found this postcard of Buffalo and wants us to have it. I'm not making this up. They arrive almost every day. So we have a lot of postcards. And I thought, let's put a few online that people haven't already seen everywhere all over the place. They haven't already seen on eBay for the last 10 years or wherever they go online. So I had a retired librarian volunteer want to do that kind of project. And she actually did sort of a look at our postcards, look online, and she selected several that she hadn't already seen online, and then we went from there and digitized them. So uniqueness is another factor in that process.
Mhm. So I'm seeing here from Larry in Rochester. He worked at the downtown library.
Yeah, we used to work together.
Digitized a number of high use items and noticed the in-person visits had septupled. So yeah, putting things online does not detract from visitorship.
Yeah, what it might do is it might do something for people cognitive, like, oh, if they have this map or this atlas or whatever it is, they might have more stuff like that. And maybe even if this map isn't the thing I need to answer my question, they might have others like it that will answer the questions. So that maybe that's the mechanism that gets people in the door.
Mm-hmm. And we have another comment from Helen in North Country, and she's talking about being careful about the names. She said that they have hundreds of people in their North Country area who are descendants of slaveholders, of which we know there were many in New York State, who are also the original proprietors of the town. Being one of these descendants, she can say that when you look into history, you find what you weren't looking for, and you can't change it, and it does need to be told.
Yeah, yeah. New York hasn't reckoned with its history of slavery as much as other states have. Not to go off topic from the Klan list, but you're right. You're right, Helen. Slavery was finally abolished in New York State in 1827. That means it was pretty well established on the eastern part of the state, much more so than the western half. So yeah, the eastern part of New York State has a legacy to grapple with of slave tradings, doing business with slave interests in the South, personally owning slaves. Absolutely, it's part of our history.
Right, and I think, too, that having the Klan list, people automatically think of, the racism of people of color, but it was also, like you said, religion, ethnicity, that it can kind of be an educational tool in the sense that people learn, oh, they were targeting other types of people too.
Right.
And in a broader sense here in Western New York. And the interesting thing too, I remember looking at that on New York Heritage, and it actually, I think, lists people by the towns too. So it's Buffalo, but it's also Western New York. Yeah, so you have people named in Clarence, in Amherst, in Orchard Park, maybe Hamburg, I know. So the different towns, and I think I looked at that. Well, I didn't remember if my ancestors were here or not, but I remember looking at it and having a moment of panic, like, is my name going to show up in there? Yeah. So I think, we, and that does show you how much history, what happened in the past does have an impact on who we are and what we do today. And I think using these resources that we have in our collections as educational tools, which brings me to another question is,
and I have something I want to chime in with too, so you go ahead.
How do you promote the collection? I mean, the name itself probably is very promotional, but other than that, how would you make people aware?
One of many of the digital projects on that page. So we have like about 100 digital projects on the page. I dropped the link in the chat. So every so often, if one of them sort of fills the community, meets the communication strategy for a given week, it might get a feature. But we have a communications manager who and that's her job, is to develop the communication strategy around our events or activities or collections or projects. So it's kind of that all goes through that office. And I just had to say there's one thing about the Klan experience in the 20s, which I think should resonate for us today, is one of the things that Sean Lay found when he studied that membership list was how it overturns our stereotypes of who we thought the Klan was. In the Northeast, the people who were attracted to the Klan were white middle-class Protestant professionals. In other words, they were me. They were me. And I think we have, it's really easy to think, oh, really the Klan was really only of interest to, rural white Southerners who looked at African Americans as economic rivals, and that's not the case. Here in the Northeast, it was people like me who were attracted to the Klan, and I think that really gives you pause, really does.
So these are great tools for learning. In the question and answer box, we have from Tim Benga, who has the Pierce collection, also in New York Heritage, and he said that they increased their foot traffic about 200% by putting that collection online. And I think that partnership with the University Library School was a really good opportunity for smaller repositories here to get things into New York Heritage, and for students to learn the digitization process and to learn a bit of historical content too. We do have another question in the chat from Margaret. How do you go about describing the item that you showed? Do you include several 500 notes about the item, the historical, so the metadata, the historical context, and the names listed?
So it looks like you're asking about the MARC record, maybe, about it? Is that what the 500 field is?
I think so.
I am not a cataloger, so I have to punt sometimes when we're talking about MARC records. So I can bring up our record for that list if you bear with me. And can see how it looks in our online catalog. I don't know if we'll be able to look at the MARC record, but okay, so I brought this up. Now let me do a share screen.
So that would be the notes field.
Yeah, I'm going to go to our online catalog and hope this loads. I don't know, has it loaded yet? Can we see how?
It's there.
Oh, good, great. So here's how we described it. The OCLC number is at the top of the screen if you want to bring it up in your cataloging tool, in WorldCat or whatever you might use. So summary note and then biographical note. I'm going to scroll a little. I'm going to guess that most of you have read this far already.
So I'm thinking that maybe Margaret's question is, how much information do you think is necessary in the notes field? Like, you gave us a lot of background that really went into beyond describing what the object was. You know, you gave us a lot of background on the object. And so maybe she's thinking along those lines, like how much.
Oh, like a narrative to contextualize it. We did do
So,
that. As you see, it's in the
she's saying yes, yeah.
Biographical or historical. So I did stick a paragraph in there. It might be close to what the narrative at New York Heritage, I can't remember. It's been a while since we were in this record. So we did put the some narrative in there to contextualize it.
Right.
Yeah, this was 2011 that we last worked on this record, so it's been 10 years.
Well, and because like you said, you know, somebody might see clan membership directory, and without being too subjective, you can definitely describe the historical and that's really important for these collections. We do historical context is very important. So let's see.
Okay, I'm going to do a stop share. I'll go back to there. Okay.
Oh, and somebody did put in the full list of your collections in New York Heritage in the link in the chat box.
Thank you.
And then C said promoting Chatham's collection via Facebook, Instagram, so social media. They had community members contact them regarding unidentified structures or people so they can update. So basically a kind of a, what do you call that? Share, crowdsourcing. Crowdsourcing. It could, yeah, crowdsourcing tool to fill in the gaps. Absolutely. Let's see, I think there was another question. When you were describing the collection, did you consult any inclusive or anti-racist description resources, and how did being mindful of the content impact your description?
Probably not, because last time when we worked on this record 10 years ago, we may not have had, I don't know if those resources were available, and you can correct me. Maybe they were and we just didn't know about them, but yeah, I didn't know about such resources. So if you're looking at this record as a cataloger and you think that it could be improved, I would love your feedback. I would love that feedback.
You know, actually that is kind of an important point. At the time you enter a description of a collection, it may not have contemporary significance. I mean, there's always some connection that you make between the past and the present. But like you said, what's going on today makes this much more relevant, this part of the past much more relevant than maybe it did 10 years ago when you first put that description in. So yes, I think collection descriptions, maybe, you know, updating them or looking at them, maybe we all benefit from that in terms of contemporary relevance. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, as I said before, I would welcome if anybody who's a cataloger who has experience with anti-racist description and cataloging, please send me your feedback.
Yeah. So Julia, who put the question, said they weren't in 2011. Yeah. Yep. So yeah. Do we have another one? I'm looking here. I don't see any more questions in the question and answer box. Nothing in the chat. Does anyone else have any other questions for Cynthia about this collection, about all of her collections? What is, I guess one of the things that I would like to ask you is, what is it something you're working on right now that you think is going to be a potential digitization project? And why is it currently relevant?
Oh, I have so many ideas. I like this many ideas of what I want to do and the ability to do this, many of them. So let's see. Digitizing, what would be like the next thing? Because right now we are mired in an asbestos abatement project and we're close to the public, and my brain is full of like, if I have to move these collections out of the path of construction, where am I going to put them? So that's kind of where my mind is at today.
That was a question. Are you open to the public now? Somebody just asked.
No, I'm sorry to say. The entire museum, not just the library, is closed to the public because we have a restoration project going on under our portico. If you've been in our building, you may be vaguely familiar with that space. Or you maybe not, because it's been closed off to the public for at least 20 years because of water infiltration. So after many, many fixes over the years, we are finally doing the end stage of restoration to open it up as public space again. And guess what happens? We found asbestos in the walls. So that meant closing everything down, and we will not be able to host people in the building until April at the earliest. So I will have Zoom visits in the library. In the meantime, I had to postpone those for a couple of weeks to make sure I can get certain library collections out of the path of construction as part of that portico. There's like new climate controls, new wiring, and I have collections that are in the path of, and long story short, so I've got to deal with that first, and then I can go back to Zoom appointments.
And actually, maybe you want to spend a minute just telling people about the building itself, since it has its own historical significance that many might not be aware of, who aren't from the area.
Sure. If you've not visited our museum, we are in the New York State building, which was built in 1900 and opened in 1901 as the New York State Pavilion, New York State building at the Pan American Exposition. So we were built with a little bit of state money. Yay, our board of trustees getting the state to build us a museum, a little bit of our money, with the understanding that once the exposition ended, the building's ownership would transfer to the Buffalo Historical Society. So we started out in advance of the Pan Am and worked out this deal to build a building for New York State to show off its glories. And then when the exposition ended, the building would remain, we would move in, and the rest of the exposition grounds would be cleared for development. So we are the sole surviving building built for the Pan Americans, still on site, still open to the public, still here for everybody to enjoy. So as a 1900 building, we kind of get old building surprises whenever we try to do any work on it.
It has a big history. So the other thing too, I thought that might be of interest to people is any kind of collaboration or work or communication that you have with other repositories across the state. I'm sure, because you mentioned about the postcards coming in, that you also get postcards that maybe deal with Westchester or Syracuse or.
Amazingly enough, no, people are sending us Buffalo postcards, so I'm lucky in that regard.
Well, that's
I don't have
good.
to, like,
you are lucky.
Move them along to another place. So yeah, but I do occasionally get something that really doesn't suit our collection, and I'll move it along. And, you know, people just spontaneously mail us stuff, and I get something like that almost every day. So most recently, somebody sent like some World's Fair memorabilia from the New York State World's Fair. Was it somebody else will know this date right off the top of their head, 1939?
39, right. 39.
Thank you. So it was a piece of advertising booklet from a tobacco company that was at the World's Fair in 1939. So I moved that along to Roswell Park because they're interested in tobacco history there. So yeah, every so often something arrives unsolicited and I have to find a new home for it.
Very interesting. So back to metadata, Carly is asking, for the physical location field of your collection, do you make that information visible to the public or not in regard to access?
In a way, yes. For our manuscript collections, this would be a manuscript collection. And we use MSS period in the call number field, which is, signals to us and our users that where it is. So in a way, our manuscript collections are in a staff-only locked room, so there's no public browsing of them. So making that location knowable I don't think it puts the collections at any sort of risk because they're still in a locked staff-only area. Does that sort of answer the question?
Yeah, I think maybe Carly was, seeing the condition of that directory, not wanting to promote handling of the original.
Right.
Yeah, that is definitely understandable.
Yeah, another thing we did with that collection is I made a photocopy of it that is right here in the room, like behind me, so that someone says, this has happened like once or twice. Someone comes and says, well, I heard you had a list of the clan members. I could just get out a photocopy and they can go over it right there, and I don't have to handle it.
And they're good with that.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Okay, let me see. Do we have any other questions from anyone? Have you ever done a trivia night?
I feel like we have done a trivia night, but it's been a few years. I would love to do a trivia night. I think we have done it, but not in the last like 2-3 years.
We should do a statewide trivia night.
Mm-hmm.
Teams, upstate versus downstate. Christy
versus museums.
Northern New York is saying yes.
Librarians versus archivists.
I think we have another program. So let me see. Oh, maybe there's another one. Well, Tim asked about any upcoming projects, which we had also. I was thinking of your real estate collection. I don't know if that's gone anywhere. Because the redlining. Yes. You had the redlining map from, what was it, the 30s or 40s?
Yeah.
And now digital redlinings become, it's where the past kind of becomes the present.
So Heidi's talking about our Pearson Pierce papers, which is like the biggest donation we've taken in biggest in terms of quantity, sheer volume. We've taken in probably in my years here. Pearson Pierce, which is P-E-A-R-C-E, was a real estate firm that just closed down shop in the last few years because the owner decided to retire. So he was either the son or the grandson of the founder. I forget how many generations the company went through. And they had been in business about 100 years. And they started out building houses in Buffalo in the 1920s in the South Campus UB area, which is Northeast Buffalo. And then after World War II, they were a big suburban developer in Tonawanda, also a little bit in Amherst, a little bit in Clarence. And they built a lot of Cape Cods and ranch houses, and kind of the look and feel of Tonawanda today is in part due to Pearson Pierce. So when they closed down, one of our activists in Buffalo made the case that we should get those records because they have files for every house they built. And we have nothing like that from any other home builders in Buffalo. So the file for a particular house, mostly in Tonawanda, but somewhere else would be either an A to Z order by address. You can get up, and there's various things like the mortgage papers, change orders for like whether you want pink or yellow tile in your bathroom. It's like that level of granularity, proof of employment, and other sorts of eligibility criteria so that you can show that you can pay for this house. I have not seen them because I don't get to actually look at stuff here, but I've not seen restrictive covenants in hard copy, but I'm told they are there, that some of these folders do have restrictive covenant language in them, which makes them kind of an important artifact about post-war development. So I am told that nowhere else does anybody have this kind of huge sort of suburban development archival collection like that. So what we did is, now we can't put like hundreds and hundreds of linear feet of files online. So we did do an index by address, and that is also should be findable on our digital projects page. So that if you have a house in Tonawanda or in Amherst or Clarence, you can look by address and see if we have the folder. And then when we're open to the public again, you can visit us and we'll get the folder out.
And I think that would answer Kate's question, who said everyone wants to see pics of their Buffalo homes. Are you planning to digitize photos of So in other words, she could go to the index on your website and.
Yeah, there's not a lot of visual material in the Pearson Pierce collection as such, very little. But we do have about 12,000 or more house pictures. And we don't have the means to just systematically digitize them, but we do it on demand. So if somebody emails us, and you can do that with that library at Buffalo History account, drop us a line, say, hey, I live at 123 Main Street. Do you have a picture of my house? And if we do, we'll get back to you and let you know. And then we can scan on demand. I had a question like that today for a house not that far from the museum. Gentleman was working, I think he's an architect, may have a commission, maybe it may have been hired to work on it. He asked, did we have a picture of it? We did. He says, I was really hoping for interior views, not exterior. And he didn't want us to scan it because it didn't tell him anything he didn't already know. So that's why we haven't been, kind of like the market for a house picture is one person.
Yeah.
The person who owns that house. Yep. So we actually end up making those kind of calculations like, can I really commit the staff time for 12,000 or 15,000 or 20,000 photos? Not really.
And scanning, so scanning on demand is the good option for things where you have a lot of volume, and as long as you have an easy way to find it, you have that index.
And we have a picture store, which I'm going to drop in the chat, because we have we earn a revenue stream from our collections. If you want to publish them, then, let me find the home screen. Then there's a small download fee, which is something we have been doing since before I was born. If you wanted to use a picture in a book back in the darkroom era, we had a fee for that service because that was real time and labor to produce that print for you to use in your book. Well, same thing, and in the digital era. The time and labor is greatly reduced, which is why our fees for using our material we cut them in half when we open up the store, because it does reduce the time and labor. Oh, okay. So Kate says, but genealogists want photos of ancestors. Okay, drop us a line. Drop me a line at library@buffalohistory.org. If I have a picture, I'll let you know, and then it'll go in the queue to be scanned.
Yeah. But again, when you're talking thousands and thousands upon thousands, and you have limited capacity, which, even though you're a bigger size institution, your library and archives is still relatively small in terms of staff and resources.
2.25 staff, and I'm one of the two.
Yeah. So, yeah, we do what we can, right?
Right. So I know and this would be the same for everybody in a job like this. Is some of the time I'm working on the questions that come in via email. Some of the time I'm pulling materials that somebody needs for an exhibit. Some of the time I'm getting content in line for our communications manager. Some of the time I'm doing a little collection development and I order some things for the collection, and on it goes. So
sometimes you're
a
giving
little bit of time on a lot of things.
Preparing presentations.
Preparing presentations. I've got 4 of them in this month.
Oh my goodness. And that is a good way also to market the collections. And I think it gives you the opportunity to also explain to people the limitations of, what you can do with the collections and the opportunities they have for exploring the collections. Yep. So I'm not seeing any other questions in here. Any last thoughts or
I think we're pretty much at closing time.
Yeah. So is there any last words you'd like to say?
Visit our digital projects, share them. Drop a line via email if there's a picture you would like to see in our picture store and it's not there. Because there are times I'm doing a scan almost every day to upload into the store. Sometimes there's a lull and I do other things, and then I get a bunch of requests. So yeah, look at our stuff, drop line.
Great. And I want to thank everyone. I want to thank Ryan Perry for helping us host this program. Thank you to Cynthia for being here. Thank you to everyone for being here. Stay tuned for our next Bits and Bytes session. It's coming up, the date and topic to be announced. And I hope everyone has a warmer weekend than we've been having.
Yeah. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for coming.
Thank you. Take care, everyone.
Okay. Have a good day.
Bye.
Bye-bye.